I want to bring in Republican Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia, a member of the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, former member of the House Education Committee. And Senator, you have a program in your state that you've been a big supporter of that the president himself touted. And I wonder what was going through your mind when the president gave a shout out to Georgia's program in the State of the Union.
Well, I had a flashback to 1990 when Governor Zell Miller and I actually were opponents for governor of Georgia, and he came up with the idea of a 4-year-old voluntary pre-kindergarten program. And he also came up with a way to fund that program, which was a statewide lottery, which required a constitutional amendment and a ratification by the people of Georgia. So we created a dedicated source of funds to fund the 4-year-old pre-kindergarten program. The thought that ran through my mind when the president was speaking is this is a great idea, but it is a 6% increase in the number of teachers you have to hire, the number of classrooms you have to build, the amount of money you have to spend. We've got to find the money to do it.
Do you think the money can be found, though? I mean, one of the things that's interesting is in the sense of cost of the overall federal budget, just to give a sense of the money here, Center for American Progress had estimated the cost of a program like this. Again, the details matter, but roughly in the ballpark of about $100 billion over 10 years. That's about $10 billion a year. And just to give a sense of what that is, in the tax extenders package that just got through, the active financing credit, which is a tax loophole for Wall Street, itself alone was $9 billion for this year. So it does seem to me that if this is something that we want to prioritize, we think is an important investment, Republican or Democrat, we can probably find $10 billion a year for it, right?
Well, you have to remember this. We're $16.5 trillion in debt. Our deficit's running about $1.2 trillion a year. We can't afford to add a cost on to government. You have to find the funds to do it. And in education, the last big mandate on public-private partner or public-federal-private partnership was IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Act, which mandated a 40% additional investment by the states in the education of kids with disabilities. The federal government promised the money to fund the mandate, but to this date only about 25% of that money is funded. So the states are going to say, where's the beef, where's the money?
Sure. Goldie, this program has been very politically popular in Georgia.
It has been. Senator Isakson, this is Goldie Taylor. I've got to stop and say thank you for a couple of things. One, I want to thank you for your involvement in creating the Georgia Peach program that helped moms and fathers who were, on welfare, AFDC, TANF at the time, to receive subsidies so that they could go back to work, so that those children could get some early childhood education. And then the follow-on of volunteer pre-K. My kids benefited from both. In fact, my oldest daughter, Catherine, was one of the first children to come through the Georgia pre-K program. She's now at Brown. Can you not say, great school, isn't it? Can you not say, Senator Isakson, that the money that would be invested on the front end, certainly something I've seen you support, and I'm glad that you did that. Can you not say that the outcomes, that finishing high school, that
staying out of prison,
decreases in early pregnancy, illicit drug use, all of those other things that become a tax or a weight on our tax base, on our society. Doesn't that?
Yeah. Do you buy this investment case that the literature suggests the president made explicitly in the State of the Union?
No, I don't think there's any question, but there's a payback both in terms of Peach Care as well as the voluntary 4-year-old pre-kindergarten program. And I appreciate Goldie's compliments very much. But we do have to find the money to fund it. You can't just hope the payback comes in dollars. The payback comes in a better life for those children, better quality of their health, better quality of their education. But we need a payback to pay the tax dollars it's going to take to fund the program.
Senator, I want to ask you about where you think the politics of this will go. If there's going to be some enthusiasm for trying to find the money for it, right? If we think it's a good idea, it's something we should prioritize, we got to find the money for it. Where the politics of this are going to go in Washington right after we take this quick break. So Senator, I want to play you something that Stuart Varney said on Fox and Friends that seems to me like, the kind of rhetoric you might expect in reaction to this from conservatives. There's a famous case in 1971 of Walter Mondale proposing something that looked like universal pre-K. It was much more federalized than this version the president has proposed, and it met with a real backlash, actually a very conservative religious backlash against sort of incursions into what is the domestic sphere. And this was Stuart Varney. I want you to just take a look at this and get your thoughts on whether this is the kind of thing you expect to hear from the Republican Party about this proposal.
look what the president is doing here. It's a repeat performance of his campaign, which is you raise taxes on the rich and you offer all kinds of free stuff to people who will vote for you in the future.
Right.
This is one of those occasions. Free preschool education for 4-year-olds. It's free. Here it is. Hand out the goodies. What the president is really doing here, because he's not saying how he's going to pay for this, he's buying votes with future taxpayer money. He's increasing the scope of the unions because it is the teachers' union which will staff these preschoolers. And he's introducing big government, more big government, to the states.
So the reason I want to play that for you is the question is this proposal, to your mind, for Republicans like yourself, is this dead on arrival, which is what would seem to be suggested by Stuart Varney's rhetoric there, or do you think this is something you want to see Republicans work on the details of to identify a funding stream that's reliable, make sure the details are right? Which of those paths forward do you anticipate fellow Republican legislators pursuing?
In the absence of an overall plan to reduce our deficit and our debt and begin to balance our budget, I don't think any new federal program is going to be very well received on the Republican side or, quite frankly, on the Democratic side. And remember this, in Georgia, we found a source of funding before we started the 4-year-old pre-kindergarten program. We used a voucher program to increase our use of faith-based education to provide it, as well as private schools to provide it. We used public schools where the public schools had the classrooms available. We put together a very flexible program that was paid for. If we're going to have a federal program, we need to inspire the local systems to come up with the money to fund that program and motivate them to do so.
I will say that, the White House hasn't put out a ton of paper on this, but what they have put out are broadly along those lines, it looks like. I mean, there's some things they've said about making sure that certain minimum standards for the teachers, right? The teachers have certificates in early childhood development, that they have levels of education that are equal to K through 12 teachers, but that broadly the way they're envisioning structuring the program is this kind of matching fund approach in which you have the federal government match programs that get expanded out by the states.
And that's what's happening in Georgia. You know, we have a little over maybe $270 million that comes in from the total assistance to parents who need daycare or pre-K assistance, about $54 million in state matching funds. 70% of that number goes directly into, you know, this classroom situation. We have something else in Georgia that we haven't really talked about. Last year we passed legislation that allowed for financial incentives for people who met, and not just the standard, but an increased standard. And so you've had 700 schools, facilities sign up and enroll in
sort
this.
of race to the top
A race to the top among this, right, in order to find sort of the best innovative ideas, you know, to push higher standards across the entire system, and I think that only benefits the kids. I just
want to add, I mean, I think the senator brought up a key point, which is why I'm not so optimistic about pre-K actually being enacted, because if the idea is that you have to have some type of budget agreement first, right, before we can move forward on any positive program, no matter how many people are supporting it, then I think it's going to be gobbled up by the partisanship that we've seen around the budget issue, which is, to me, disconcerting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we only have pre-K, sort of universal pre-K in these districts in New Jersey because it was court-ordered. Right. It was not legislative, legislated, and the discussion about expanding it is sort of dead on arrival.
Well, I want to talk about let's imagine a better future in which it wasn't dead on arrival, and I want to talk about what the details, a little bit of the devil's in the details, and also talk about what wiggle room there might be on the Republican side. Senator Isakson from Georgia, I really appreciate you joining us this morning. It's great to have you. You are welcome back anytime. Next time in New York, I'd love to have you at the table.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.